So we are in GE mode, and even though I'm not running, I feel like I'm as busy as a person who's running. But I'm with someone who is actually busier. He is a returning champion. He went on Teh Tarik before it was famous. I don't know how famous it is, but he was one of the OG ones. So Professor Paul Tambyah, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
It's deja vu.
Yes,
No, so
indeed.
before we start, I just wanted to shake your hand and thank you. And a lot of people do not know this, but Professor Tambyah has been really, really supportive of the Palestinian initiatives. He's been generous with his time, with his money. So I just wanted to get that. I know you don't like to tell people about your deeds, but I thought it's important that I acknowledge that. So thank you. It's a cause that's important to me, so I wanted to.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that this is not something new. In fact, one of my heroes is Dr. Ang Swee Chai.
Indeed.
And I actually went to KL to interview her 15 years ago.
Really?
I
Wow.
posted that on my Facebook.
Right.
And that was at the time when the earlier invasion, I've
Yeah.
lost count of the
Yeah,
number
yeah,
of invasions of Gaza there have been. But she gave a very good speech in Kuala Lumpur on that. And I took a picture with her and Professor Toh Han Chong.
Right.
And we took another picture two years, last year I think it was.
Right, when she was here,
When she was here
at
in
med school,
Singapore.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
No. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I mean, especially since you were one of the OG, I think yours was episode 9. So
Really?
Yes.
And now you're
It's
what, 100?
111 or 12.
Wow, okay,
So,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm really thankful. And I really hope you do well.
Thank you.
I'm really, I go by individuals, and I like MOS, Rahayu, I hope she does well. Zul Rahim, I hope you do well. I have no problem saying that. Now that we've gotten the niceties out of the way, time to turn the screws a bit.
Okay.
So in your last episode with me, right, or in that previous episode 5 years ago, you said it's a matter of time before Singaporeans move left.
Right.
Has that happened in the past 5 years?
Unfortunately, it hasn't. And I think part of the thing is Singapore is one of the world's most globalized cities. And in 2020, there was hope that the world was going to move a little bit to the left. But unfortunately, in the last 5 years, it's moved to the right. It's moved to the other extreme. You look what's happening in Europe with all these right-wing parties in France, in Germany. And of course, the most extreme example is in the US, where a lot of people didn't expect Trump to come back and to win. And not only has he won, but he's literally turning the country around.
Yeah. So even you see that in Singapore as well. There's a.
I definitely see that, and again, part of it is the bubble. I get a lot of interactions with people from my faith, and a lot of them unfortunately get right-wing material from evangelical Christians in the U.S. And not just that, even from educated people who I'm quite surprised, because most of the educated people are pretty left of center, especially in universities. We're being attacked with that, right? Being so woke and all this kind of thing. But there's quite a substantial portion actually who are quite right, and they are Trump resonates to them.
Yeah, I think people underestimate that. There's
Right.
still a lot of them, I think. But yeah, we are an open society. We should have different perspectives and so on. But does that bode well for you electorally?
Well, again, it's hard to say. And, I think the Singapore government is in an awkward position. On the one hand, they are very neoliberal and very business friendly, very conservative in a lot of things. But on the other hand, they cannot tahan this anti-trade kind of attitude. They are perceived as being very pro-American. But at the same time, they have very good ties with China, with Singapore. As you know, the Singapore passport is incredibly powerful. You can go to North Korea, you can go to Iran, with the Singapore passport. And so, in fact, I've reminded people that Singapore was one of probably only 3 countries in the world where they could have the Trump-Kim summit.
Right.
Singapore, Vietnam, and Switzerland.
Right.
Because we have an active DPRK embassy and an active US embassy. So it's very hard to say. I mean, I'm sorry that's not a great answer.
No,
but
it's
that's-
fine.
I think it's the reality.
That's what elections are about, right?
Yeah.
It's always uncertain, right? So let's get to that. Why not contest in a GRC? Don't you think what you are doing now? So you have declared in Bukit Panjang. I don't know whether you are playing chess and then on nomination day. And then Dr. Chi is also going in an SMC. Why not the two of you go into a GRC? show your intent, like what Mr. Lau did, what Pritam does?
Right. I'll tell you why. And the simple answer is been there, done that. Because in 2015, my first electoral outing, it was in a GRC. And that was when I realized how big a GRC is. Bukit Panjang is the biggest SMC.
Yeah.
So it's not that
33,000.
Yeah, it's not that I'm scared of
Right.
walking the ground. But in terms of geographical spread, getting stuck in the traffic because you want to go there in the evening when the crowds are there, just covering all the blocks in that limited period of time is really, really, really difficult. And the thing is, I'm not saying that we won't go to the GRC, but I think the lesson from Mr. Lau is you have to hold the SMC for a while. And then you use that as a base, and then you move out to the GRC.
Okay.
It doesn't work the other way around.
So you don't think that if you and Dr. Chi went?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we would be defeated quite easily.
Really?
Yeah, because just the logistics of it. The logistics alone would be just simply too challenging.
But Dr. Tan almost made it.
Dr. Tan almost made it, but don't forget, he was an MP in Ayer Rajah for more than 20 years.
That is true, yeah.
And frankly, every time he walks around there, everybody knows him.
Right.
Everybody over the age of, say, 35 or 40 knows him. Because he's an MP, he's a grassroots MP. He was a CEC member, he was the only backbencher who was a CEC member.
He was. Yeah.
So in a way, he was doing the Lao thing. I mean, because he went from the SMC to the GRC. He went from Ayer Rajah SMC to the West Coast GRC.
Right.
There was just a break in between.
Right.
And
so
of course, he changed parties.
Yes. So there's no precedence basically for what people are suggesting you
That's
to do.
right. Because I think
so it's always win the SMC, then expand, not the other way around.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, we already have a question. This is in the private chat. Dr. Paul, what do you make of the fact that Bukit Panjang SMC is intact, but Bukit Batok SMC is redrawn? This is a question we actually discussed off air just before this.
Yeah, and in fact, I asked Walid as a political scientist, as an expert in the field.
I was thinking that it does seem like it forces SDP to make a decision, right? So either both of you go out and leave, or one of you, and then that weakens the potential of having a GRC. Is that your assessment?
Yeah, to be honest, I frankly have no idea. And I think that's the genius of the PAP. They're forcing us to try and guess, you see, what they're up to, and whether they're going to pull some stunt on nomination day. And, so that's why, in a way, we came out very early, and we said that, look, okay, this is what we're going to do. Dr. Chi is going to Sembawang West, I'm going to Bukit Panjang. And, unless there's a major something happens along the way, that's what you're going to find on nomination day. And in the meantime, we're trying to figure out what the PAP is up to.
What's your sense so far of what the PAP is up to?
To be honest, I have no idea. I asking my political science friends, my chess playing friends, because this is like a game of chess.
Oh, indeed. It's a game of chess.
The guy is moving his bishop, and you don't know what the bishop is doing
right,
there.
Right. But also, since 2020,
right,
the front bench of the PAP has weakened. They've lost 3 people from the front bench. 3 anchor ministers, right? Tharman Iswaran and Tan Chuan Jin was speaker but anchor. So there are fewer bishops and castles to move around, right?
Right. I mean, there are a couple among the SMSs and MOSs who may have the potential to move up. But
so you think they would be leading GRC?
No, I don't think they're ready to lead GRC.
Yeah.
So actually, that is interesting that they will see. But don't forget, they're not sending a minister to Sengkang or to Aljunied.
Indeed. Yeah. So is that a sign that they've accepted?
I think so. So in a way, this is the trajectory, that most of the alternative parties see. You win an SMC, then you work hard, you keep your SMC, then you go to a GRC, then you win the next GRC.
Right.
Which is going to be very long.
Right. But I have a lot of respect for you guys putting yourself out there. It's hard to be a PAP candidate, harder to be an opposition candidate.
Definitely.
Yeah. So like a boss says, it seems like they are more willing to allow Prof. Paul to contest and not keen on Dr. Chi to contest and win. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well,
you are the moderate opposition now.
Hello, I joined the SDP because they are very clear cut in terms of their ideology, the fact that they are not afraid to say things, and if that's their view of moderate, then good luck to them. But to be honest, I think they're really scared of Dr. Chi. And I think I mentioned this. I mentioned this on the Yalabat podcast. Is that I think Biswa is the one who talked about conviction politicians. And in fact, I was talking to a bunch of activists, and they said, actually, since JBJ passed away, there's really no iconic politician in Singapore apart from Chee Soon Juan.
You don't think Pritam is iconic?
No, Pritam is pragmatic. See, so this was the distinction I made on that podcast. That most politicians, and I hate to say this, including myself, are pragmatic. You pick your battles, and that's from years in academia.
Same. But as an activist, I pick my battles as well.
Whereas Dr. Chi doesn't. He just goes in there and just and that annoys people.
Okay, you're right. Years of academia.
Years of academia. You got to choose.
But it's also for your own sanity, right? If you don't speak battles.
Well, it's your own sanity, but on the other hand, there's a certain amount of liberation. So I've been picking my battles all along. And the interesting thing is, after I got into politics, then all of a sudden people expect me to be the contrary guy. So it was sort of liberating in its own way.
Right. Okay. Yeah, maybe I will try that one day.
Well, congratulations on getting your tenure anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, Prof. Tambyah was one of the first to congratulate me. So what happens if a PAP sends a minister to Bukit Panjang SMC? Well, that will be the highest honour to Professor.
It will be a huge honour.
Huge honour. I don't think they will do that. But what happens? Let's just entertain that question.
Yeah, I think it will be very interesting. And, I hope they would allow a one-on-one debate. Because I think that will be an opportunity to really, lock horns with somebody who knows the inside scoop of what's going on with the PAP. And in a way, it'll be an opportunity for them to clarify, what they think and whether I've been painting a caricature of what the PAP is like in terms of its ideology and its policies. So I would be very happy if they decide to send a minister.
I volunteer to the PAP candidate who's contesting against you. I volunteer to be the moderator.
Thank you. I think you'd be a great moderator.
We can do it here or wherever.
Yeah.
I think, but debates used to be a thing of the.
They used to be, definitely.
The PAP was happy to debate that, and correct. You can see this on YouTube, like some of the older.
The JBJ, Cham Si Tong.
Yeah, exactly. Go Chok Tong, Lee Hsien Loong for EP, and then you had Lee Hsien Loong, Lee Kuan Yew, Go Chok Tong versus Jufri and Cham Si Tong, for the GRC, So let's bring that back. I mean, we had that one where James shot to superstardom, but I do think we need more of that. This one-on-one debates. Let's
the
push for it.
I think is
all
two.
Yeah.
It's much better than the 5%.
100%. I love it.
Although I'll tell you, during the 2015 general election, there was that this 5% thing.
Taman, right? And you?
No. That was IQ. That was Shan, myself, Ben Pui, and I think somebody else. I can't remember who it was. No, but there was a TV one with where Soon Juan was there.
Okay.
And I remember that because soon after that we visited Cheng Bok, and Cheng Bok said that he would support us, and he had his longtime grassroots people with him. And then he said, after that debate, I had a 180-degree turn in my opinion of Chee Soon Juan. And then I said, why was that? And then his grassroots guy said, when, was it Heng Swee Kiat or somebody? Lawrence Wong, maybe, who read a criticism of Soon Juan.
It was PM Wong,
Yeah, he was reading from a script, so it sounded like it wasn't something that he was spontaneously saying or something that he was told to say. And this guy who's Cheng Bok's grassroots advisor for years and years and years, he said, based on what I knew about Chee Soon Juan, I half expected him to pick up the chair and hit Lawrence Wong on the head. And when he replied very calmly, he said, I suddenly realized that I've been snookered. That all I've been told for the last 20 years is not true.
Right. So I guess, we discussed this in a previous episode. I don't want to relitigate it, but for a lot of people, remember that scene like "Come Here, Mr. Go."
Yeah.
So that scene plays
Exactly.
in a lot of,
It's stuck in people's
it's stuck in
minds.
people's minds. Yeah,
Of that generation.
yeah, exactly.
But
So
not
not
the
younger ones,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Nobody knows about that
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah.
And when they try and replay it, then the
Yeah.
younger ones know it's been spliced together.
Right. And also like that's not the Dr. Chin now, right?
Exactly,
So who
yeah.
cares? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
So since we are on that, would you say this? Please don't give the politically correct answer, but if Dr. Chi doesn't win, is this his last GE, you think?
I don't think so. I mean, he's still, he's what, 62? Yeah. The guys in Yellowback calculated it for me. I couldn't remember. I know we had his 60th birthday a couple of years ago.
Right.
Was it 2 years or 3 years? I can't remember. Yeah, it was still during COVID, I think.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
so it was relatively recent. So, he's 10 years younger than Hsien Loong. So I think he's still got some ways to go.
But after so many times he's been Sec-Gen of SDP since what, 1992?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so
Somewhere
that's...
around there. No,
that's
1993.
Yeah, so that's 3 decades already, yeah. So isn't it time to hand over to somebody else?
No, I don't think so. And this is an issue that always comes up, see, which is people talk about succession planning. Succession planning happens in family business. It doesn't happen in democratic politics. See, in democratic politics, people come up. And if there was somebody who had the same kind of energy or attitude or spirit as he did, I mean, he'd be out.
Oh.
But currently there isn't.
You?
No way. Hey,
Why?
hello, I'm an academic. I'm the guy who likes to read the papers. It's quite funny. One of my early political speeches in 2015, I tried to give this rebel-rousing type of speech. And then one of my students came up to me and said, you don't sound like yourself.
That's not you.
He said, you should go back to, okay, this is this, and this is this, and therefore this is this. The professor. I said, okay. And that's actually been a good piece of advice. Because I think that's the way I teach.
Yeah.
And that's me. I realize more and more that you have to be yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
Because voters see through it. Yeah,
They can see
exactly.
through
They see through it. Yeah.
And people who know me, they know that okay, I'm a teacher. I can entertain people. My lectures, my ratings have to be above a certain percentage. So it has to have facts, but it has to have enough entertainment.
Right. So you bring that to your...
I bring that to my political life,
Okay.
because I'm the same person.
So it's interesting. Do you guys in a party, in your party, do you discuss this? Okay, I'm playing this role.
Yeah.
I'm this. I'm the killer. I'm the funny guy.
We don't.
So you just let everybody...
We just let it go, and again, it doubles up, see. So you can see who's the guy who's good with logistics, who's the guy who's good with the aunties, who is the person who... like we were discussing the Sembawang team, and we were talking about the different members. The Sembawang team has just been announced, and one of the things Sun Chuan said is, he said Suraya is fantastic on the ground. When she goes around, she says hello auntie, she puts her arm around her and she talks to them, and they're Chinese, Malay, they just warm to her. See, so he said that's her strength, and that's the kind of way we will sort of position her in the campaign and also moving forward. See.
Okay. So what would be a good number for Dr. Chi, yourself, and the Sembawang team?
51 would be a good number, but to be honest, that's a pipe dream.
Yeah, it is a pipe dream, right?
Pipe dream.
Okay, what would you rate your chances of winning? Honestly,
honestly, I think my chances are probably about 49-51.
You 49?
Me 49. I mean, to be totally honest, just looking at the way things have worked out, the way the way things are happening on the ground, the environment. I was just talking to one of our volunteers yesterday at the APA event that we had at Pang Sua Pond, and he said, even among the younger generation, there's still that fear factor.
There is.
He said during his Hari Raya visiting, people are going, "Are you sure your vote is secret?" I said, "Of course it's secret." I said, "Just tell them 1 million people voted
exactly.
against the PAP."
I just don't understand. 1 million plus is not possible even if they wanted to. First of all, the opposition witnesses every step.
Exactly. They're there.
But second of all, just logically, it's not. But
it's not possible. But still, that thinking.
Yeah. A lot of people still think that.
And what surprised me was that he said, "I said, oh yeah, the older people." He said, "No, even the younger people are so afraid."
Right.
I said, there's no reason to be afraid. See, the PAP is not going to just go after you because of this.
So it's interesting. You said 49. You got 46.
Yeah.
The previous time.
I think I can at least improve 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think definitely you'll.
Yeah.
Not definitely, but
Yeah.
there's a good chance you'll improve because you've been there longer.
Exactly.
But also the ground is very unsweet for the government now, right? Don't
Oh
you
no,
think?
but they're giving out all these handouts. You know, and the handouts actually do make a difference in the short term, which is something that, you know, we just cannot compete with. Do you know there's this Bukit Panjang $1 thing? You pay $1, you get 3 trays of eggs.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, how in the world can we compete with that?
Right.
Okay? We just cannot compete with that. And you know, the MP is there giving it away. All these white-shirted people are hanging around, and those are the people who are going to be there. You know, when they do the flyering, and the residents see them, they know their faces. These are their neighbors, people from around the area. So the odds are really stacked against us. You see.
I feel like you're just trying to downplay expectations.
No, I don't want to jinx myself. You know? I mean, some of my crazy friends, when they said the boundaries haven't changed, they came around and congratulated me. I said, hello, what are you talking about? I said, you know, the PAP never does anything without thinking 345 times.
True.
So they probably have some kind of strategy that they have in mind.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to try and figure it out. Maybe they think we'll go crazy trying to figure it out.
So there's a question by Arun about equitable health outcomes for minorities, but I do want to get to the health policies later on. So there's this comment: how are the talks? So I'll get to 3 cornered fight Akmal in a while, but let's explore this a bit, right? So your chances of winning, you would say that you are not the favorite in this. Right?
Oh, definitely not.
But why? You are
like
professor in NUS, the Faculty of Medicine, not political science, you know. You're in medicine, like you have everything that a Singaporean voter would want, right?
No,
and in your previous election, you said race doesn't matter.
Yeah,
right?
it's what they would want in a professor of medicine. It's not what they want in
You
necessarily.
Think so?
Yeah, and again, you know, there's this thing that troubles me about the Trump thing. He's attacking academia.
Yeah.
You know, all the universities are sending recruitment teams up to the East Coast and West Coast to try and recruit academics. You see? So the academic thing is a two-edged sword. People like you and me like academics. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in our job. But the man in the street is very easily moved by, you know, Trump going, all these academics sitting in ivory towers, super woke, corrupting your children, you know, this kind of thing.
I guess partly, I mean, when I was doing some self-reflection, I guess academics have not done a good job of speaking the language of the common person, I guess.
Well, that's part of it. And again, this is where I think in the medical school we have a slight advantage over political science in that, you know, especially because we do have a practice in public sector, so we do encounter. But, you know, to hit that research target, you have to limit the amount of practice that you have, and you do spend a lot of your time with fellow academics in your research and writing papers and sitting and all that kind of thing.
So I want to get back to my earlier question. So on Dr. Chi specifically, as long as he's there, you wouldn't want to be SecGen.
I don't think I would want to be SecGen either way.
Really?
Yeah, seriously. I've hit this sweet spot, see, where I do the policies, I'm in charge of that, I say hello to, I go on these house visits, I'm going to look after a constituency. But frankly, looking after a political party is a whole different kettle of fish. You know, because, I mean, Dr. Chi has to go and try and balance out all these people to try and find the candidates. He asks us for opinions, you know, the CEC all contributes. But ultimately, you know, he's taking the leadership in that. He's meeting the contractors, you know, all this kind of thing. And frankly, to be a successful academic, you have to be able to outsource certain things to other people. I have a fantastic lab person, the postdoc who runs my lab. You know, she knows all the chemicals, where to get from where, you know, where to get this, that, and the other. And so there's certain things I can do, and there's certain things I recognize I cannot do.
So let's talk about the elections a little bit more, then we get to what happens if or when you get into parliament, right?
Sure.
So Sembawang, 3 cornered fight. So NSP has made some claims about the SDP. So what's going on with that?
Actually, they are, I think as we speak, they are meeting right now, or either today or tomorrow. So they're meeting with Dr. Chi and a couple of others, and and I think they'll negotiate something out. So, I mean, in theory, again, you're the political science expert, but, there's a whole idea that three-corner fights is bad for democracy. I think it's a very weird Singaporean thing.
I agree.
Yeah, right?
I
Because
agree
most
with
countries, it's not an issue, see?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And also, like, if you believe in democracy, you believe in democracy. That's
Exactly,
the first thing.
yeah.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Second thing, I think if there's a third party against WP, SZP and PSP, I think the third party won't get their deposit.
I think so.
You think so?
Historically, that's
think
been
so.
the case.
I think that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the opposition voters see that there is a clear, stronger party, unless it's People Voice versus Red Dot, and people are unsure, then maybe there'll be a split. But I think if there's,
but I think even that in Pasir Ris Punggol, right? The last.
Yeah. Correct. There was a bit of a split, but it wasn't.
One
correct.
side lost the debate.
Correct. Yeah. So I do think that we
Singapore
shouldn't be
voters are
too worried.
discerning.
I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. So I'm not. When people say, what if Goh Meng Seng comes to Tampines? Yeah.
So who cares?
Yeah, who cares, right? Yeah. So anyway,
I mean, nothing against you, Goh Meng Seng.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, like, if WP loses because of Goh Meng Seng, that's on WP. That's not on Goh Meng Seng.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's their fault.
It's their fault. Yeah. Then it's. I don't think we need to be too worried about that. So thank you, but you'll still negotiate.
Yeah.
You'll still try to avoid.
Yeah, we will.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Well, and the reason why we do that is because the Singapore public doesn't like three-corner fights.
Right.
It's not because it's a bad thing.
Yes, it is true.
But that's what the people are telling us.
Yeah,
They don't want to see three-corner fights.
Right. Okay. So now I was looking at the Straits Times microsite, right, and then the constituency. So I've been a bit obsessed about that for the past couple of days. And where do you see your votes at? What is your vote bank if there's such a thing? Is it age group, ethnicity, socioeconomic status? What is it?
Yeah, I think it's more socioeconomic status. As we were talking about before we started this, I'm very suspicious about those numbers because they don't seem to gel with what we see on the ground.
Okay.
But when we did the counting centers, because in Singapore there's quite a lot of granularity.
Right.
And in fact, we think that sometimes the PAP or the Prime Minister and his secretary, they study that in great detail. Don't forget, the last Prime Minister is a mathematician.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the things that we found in the counting centres that was really interesting in Bukit Panjang was that there are 3 BTO blocks in Bukit Panjang, and we did the best there.
Oh.
Yes, we did the best in the 3 BTO blocks.
So that's age. That's about
that's
age.
young adults.
Yeah, younger voters.
They're the sandwich group, you see. They have to worry about their kids, the childcare resources, and they worry about looking after their parents. So they are caught in between. The place where we did the worst was the 3-room and the 1 and 2 room.
Oh.
And the theory is that these are individuals who are very dependent on government services, and this is where the fear factor comes in. The 4 and 5 room, and there's 3 condos there, we were about average. But you can see there's a difference. They do well in BTO, they did very poorly in the 3 room and below.
Very interesting. And you didn't think ethnicity was a factor?
I didn't think so, because in fact, the 3 room and below, I think there are slightly more minority in the 3 room and below.
What about Kelvin Cheng, Vivian, Masagos, whatever, this whole thing, do you think that has, from your own walkabouts, do you think
I can tell you that has pissed off a lot of young people of all ethnicities, because the young people everywhere are upset about what's going on.
I agree. I agree.
And in fact, even in the US, see, everyone says Trump won the election. He didn't, He actually got 3 million fewer votes than he got in 2020. But Kamala lost the election because she got more than 11 million fewer votes than Joe Biden got. And in the US, voting is not compulsory. So all these young people just stayed at home.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing. That's the thing. There are a lot of young people, I mean, in the US, but also in the UK, right? There were, the Conservatives were punished, partly, not entirely, but partly.
But Labour is just as guilty, though.
Yeah, exactly. They are. Yeah. So the problem is, I suppose now, how do they disentangle themselves from this now?
Well, you've seen what the Home Affairs Minister has done.
Yes.
He's come out very strongly, first time ever, at least in my memory, to condemn the killings of the medics.
Right.
Which
although he has, I think even in November he mentioned, I think if you look at his him, Minister Shanmugam specifically, he's the one who has said the most about
think so,
about Israel.
probably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
probably.
think so. He's the one who has condemned Israel the most. Although yesterday's one was
Was very strong.
very, very strong. Universal condemnation. Yeah. Hey, I welcome it, man.
No,
I'm happy. Yeah.
And frankly, I mean, that's something that the medical community globally actually
100%.
has failed, to
100%.
condemn. If it happened
100%.
anywhere else in the world,
Yeah, why is that? Why is that?
I mean, it's just the fear factor, the fear of being labeled anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it cannot be that the medical doctors, I mean, you are here because you feel something about this, right?
Yeah.
You are not in a startup or anything,
But,
right?
and
So-
the saddest thing is, you look at people like Jewish Voices for Peace.
Yeah.
Within the Jewish community,
Yeah.
there's a strong support for
Yeah.
Palestinian human rights.
Indeed, yeah.
So it's not a racial thing or a religious thing.
Right,
It's, as you pointed out yesterday, it's a colonial thing. It's just basically
Thank
a
you.
colonial
Prof.
thing.
Tambyah was at my book launch, and
Yeah,
that's how I started.
Fantastic book. I just started reading it. I told him the chapter titles are already great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So there is a response here.
Yeah.
Fragments of escape. I don't know. Are you from Straits Times? So Straits Times uses data from Department of Statistics and Estimates.
Right.
It's not accurate, not 100% accurate, but it's pretty good. Okay, I take that
Yeah,
point
it's
for
possible.
sure. Yeah, that's very possible. Okay.
I told him a couple of theories which might be distorting that. See, one, maybe people are renting out their flats, or they're using the address to get their kids into a good school. So I think that, I mean, within those
very
those
Singaporean.
framework, very Singaporean. but you're right. And this is one of the things that the alternative parties have been complaining about forever, and not just the alternative parties, my academic friends as well.
Yeah.
The lack of data, lack
yeah.
of publicly accessible data.
Yeah.
So this presumably this is from One Map SG, which has very granular data, but it's based on the planning areas.
Yeah.
And the planning areas do not correlate with the constituencies.
Correct.
So they are forced to make estimates.
I mean, that's one thing that I think we all should collectively push for, right? Like voter data, just
bigger than that. The SDP has called for a Freedom of Information
I
Act
agree,
for a very long time.
Of course, academics will always be in favor of that. So I would want as much data as possible. One of the things, right, that I always felt that, when you have all this health data, you have it by race, right? So Malays and Indians, we are more likely to get heart diseases, and my dad even passed on from a heart attack. So, and I think it's okay if we have that data, because I think race could explain it, but I think we still
Actually, race is a social construct. I mean, this is very, very clear. I was just reading Francis Collins' book. Francis Collins was the head of the NIH, and he said, race actually came about after colonialism.
Right.
It was the whole idea of race was used to justify colonialism.
Right.
But in fact, you look at the amount of intermarriage in Singapore.
Right. So at least 1 out of 4
marriages,
mine is
exactly,
intermarriage. So
intermarriage.
yours is as well. Yours is
exactly,
even more.
And you look at some of the ministers.
Right.
Yeah.
No, so definitely agreed. So race is a social construct.
And in fact, medically speaking, there are certain diseases which are more common in Japanese and African Americans. Yeah, and in fact, again, this is a bit of the conceit in infectious disease, is that we believe that all the changes are a result of the body's resistance to infections, from parasites, from malaria, from like we found out a reason why just recently it's been published why African Americans are more prone to high blood pressure and kidney disease. And it turns out the gene that makes them more prone to this actually protects them from African sleeping sickness. So while this, because there's no good reason why.
But that shows race does matter, right? In this health outcomes.
The African sleeping sickness is present in West Africa, but it's also present in other parts. So, like for example, thalassemia, the kind of blood disorder. So it's present in Greek people.
Okay.
Where malaria was actually a big problem in Italy and Greece.
Right.
And it's also a problem in Southeast Asia. But it's not a problem in Africa.
Right.
So the different infectious diseases occur at different places. It's true, some of them were more common in the tropics. But don't forget, all humankind came out of Africa.
Indeed.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then it migrated.
Right.
See, we migrated to Asia, to Europe, and then eventually to North America, Australasia.
So what about this? When we go to the hospital, Indian is one of one of the risk factors for
I know. No, it's not.
Oh, it's not okay.
Yeah, it's actually
Thank you.
it's
I
not.
can start eating my biryani back already.
No, unfortunately you can't. Family history is there.
That's true. Yeah. But my point is, even if we wanted to do it by race, right? I have no problems as long as there are other metrics as well, like socioeconomic status, which I think is a far more powerful indicator of, like, say, education outcomes.
Yeah, this is in a way we're following what's happened in many countries, especially in the US. See, in the US, they use race as a surrogate for, and this is the whole DEI and equity thing. Because in the US, the history of African Americans is 300 years of slavery, free labor being provided to the population. So the idea was that you try and redress some of that inequity. See. So in many other countries, it's not the same. And in fact, like I said, the geneticists and all that will tell you that it's actually quite meaningless.
Okay.
See, this thing. I'll give you a very practical example. So we had a young man who had this chronic lung disease, and he was quite ill. And every one of us, so we wrote to some experts all over the world, and they said, test him for cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a rare disease, but it's almost exclusively seen in Europeans. So I asked him, he swore to me every single one of his grandparents, his parents, his great-grandparents, all Chinese. So we didn't test him. So we operated on him, and then he had a relapse very soon after that. And then finally we tested him, and it turned out he had a rare variation of this cystic fibrosis. And this has also been rarely reported in Korea and Japan. So these genetic things, they are not hard and fast based on the social construct of race. They occur in different populations, in different situations.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that. That was a lesson in medicine I got. Free lesson tonight. Appreciate it. So definitely, I think we need more data as a whole. Whatever it is, whether it's educational outcomes, it's voter data, and so on. So you are saying that younger voters is where you are.
Yeah. I mean, I think younger voters are the group that...
so what is their number one concern? Housing?
Well, cost of living. Cost of living in terms of housing, the fact that, most of them cannot afford to move out of their parents' place without some significant support from their parents, which is very different from my generation's time, you see.
Yeah.
Where we get married straight away. You propose marriage by asking that person to apply for an HDB flat.
I think if I were a young voter, I would be super angry just because of housing.
Exactly, because you're kind of trapped in this setting, you see.
So what about the people who already have houses? What's their...
Yeah, so again, there's a minority of people, who are in their 20s, first-time voters. But if you're talking about those who already have houses, they are the sandwich group. So these are the people who are worried about the cost of looking after their kids. The statistic just came out. Singaporeans are spending more than $1.5 billion on tuition for their kids.
That's crazy.
Which is just insane.
That is crazy.
And we have such a great education system. We have all the resources. We have the infrastructure. We have really good teachers. And yet parents feel that they need to spend more than $1.5 billion. It just doesn't compute.
That is madness. It is madness,
Yeah.
And what would the SDP do differently about that then?
Yeah, so the SDP has a very comprehensive education policy.
That is true. Actually, I would say SDP has a lot of comprehensive. Now, you may not agree with SDP's policies, but one thing you cannot say about SDP is they don't have policies. They have very, very comprehensive policies. In your opinion, is social mobility a primary issue that needs to be tackled today, or do you think that there have been good strides already?
Thanks, that's one of my favorite topics. I think social mobility in Singapore has taken a step backwards.
Really?
Yes. And
even after all the discussion on inequality?
Yeah, it's actually gotten worse. And this is related to all this education things. If you have to spend $1.5 billion in tuition, who's going to afford that? Those who already are rich to begin with. And, it's like the schools, the location of the schools.
Yeah.
It's like, I asked, Edwin Tong about the EIP in landed properties and condominiums, and he gave me a very waffling answer, But frankly, part of the reason for that is to promote social mobility.
Right.
Because, I'm from St. Andrews, but one of the best pieces of news we heard was ACPS moving to Tengah.
Yeah.
Because finally that gives an opportunity for so-called heartlanders to go to a brand name school, and then with the affiliated school thing, they get a better chance of going to ACSI or ACS Barker for secondary school, and it opens so many doors.
Yeah.
There was a parliamentary question about the students in the GEP, and they're overwhelmingly from high income.
Even when I heard the DSA data,
that's crazy.
only 6% were from lower income. That defeats the entire purpose of the scheme.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that one.
But that is again, it's a symptom of the problem. See, is that the parents recognize.
But how do you walk back that? So the MOE is trying to walk back the tuition already. But parents are not buying it. So
they've abandoned the GEP for primary school.
Right.
Because that was getting really out of control.
Right.
So
that's a good step, right?
That is a good step. I totally support that. In fact, we recommended that.
Yes.
More than 10 years ago.
Indeed.
This is why
I think Dr. Chi did a video on that.
Exactly. Many years ago. In fact, this is why I said, we put up these policies, they say these are useless, will never work. And then 10 years later, they copy it. And in fact, I got ChatGPT and DeepSeek to try and analyze. You saw that, right? And it was quite striking, the lag period between the time the SDP puts up a policy and the time the Singapore government adopts it.
So interestingly, there's a question: how do you verify that the the PAP adopts the policies of the SDP?
Ask ChatGPT or DeepSeek, depending on your affiliation. I did both. I mean, frankly, that's what my students are doing. I asked them, and they said 90% of them are using ChatGPT So I'm not setting essay questions anymore. The essay is over.
I agree, man. I feel like the only way to beat that is go back to pen and paper.
Exactly. In the exam hall, which is very stressful. Or the project where they do a presentation. Which actually they do a lot in the States. And which is why they are so successful. Because they force the students to articulate, to challenge, to debate.
That's something that we need to nurture, right? Definitely. Healthcare policy, right? So assuming you are in Parliament already, right? I assume the first issue you'll be talking about is healthcare.
The first speech I'll give is going to be healthcare.
What is it? What is your improvement to what the PAP is doing? Of course, under Minister Ong, we've had a revamp.
We've had attempts, and in fact, let me get this very clear. We have an excellent healthcare system. We have very good doctors, nurses, allied health professionals. Even the administrators are very.
Are you going to say vote PAP or
no? But there's always a but. And the but is the political philosophy. See, which unfortunately I think ties the hands of the healthcare system, and it's a neoliberal philosophy which is imported from Thatcher and Reagan. So you have all the ingredients in there for a really fantastic healthcare system, but because of the political philosophy, the idea that somebody is trying to cheat the system, see, and because you're trying to catch the 1 or 2 people who are trying to cheat the system, you penalize the 98 or 99 people who are not, and you make life difficult for them.
And you are in favor of universal healthcare.
That's right, and I recognize that you're going to have 1 or 2 people who try and scam the system, but eventually, they will be found out if you have proper enforcement mechanisms. See? But in general, for healthcare, it's a difficult way to scam the system. It's so much easier to claim to be a government official from somewhere.
So this is the moral hazard problem, right? In economics, right? And if you have insurance for your car, you are more likely to leave it unlocked because you're complacent, right? I remember actually your 2015 speech, one of the rally speeches. You addressed this, and then you said nobody thinks like that about healthcare. Nobody thinks since I have insurance, I'm gonna be hurting my health.
Exactly.
Actively hurting my health.
Because you have an old car, you want to get rid of the car, you let somebody steal it.
You do it for other things, right? But not health.
Not for your healthcare, because healthcare is very personal.
But you're right, it does. The debate on healthcare is not really about policies. I think it is about philosophy. 100%.
It's the underlying philosophy.
100%. And we need to have that debate because we all agree there's public goods, right? We all agree defense is a public good. It's just that when it comes to healthcare, why is it not seen in the same manner?
And it's because of the ideology and the philosophy behind it. So the policies that the SDP comes up with are all anchored in our left of center ideology.
Oh, left of center?
Yeah. What do you mean? You think we're radical left? Hey, election coming. No, but in reality, in Singapore, left of centre is considered radical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think the SDP has moderated over the past 5 to 7 years?
I don't think so. I mean, because just yesterday we took on the POFMA about the activists because when they got arrested, Sun Juan called us up and said we have to come up with a statement in support of them. See, I mean, come on, these people are delivering a letter to the Prime Minister,
right,
and then they are charged. And they are charged because there's a law which says you cannot assemble at a certain protected place. But the president is always supposed to be the people's president. But the people's president cannot receive a letter from the public, or cannot receive a letter. And the numbers have kept changing. It used to be 5 people was an illegal assembly. Then it became 1 person. No, now it's 0 people. It's a pair of shoes. So that's something that the SDP felt that, and Sun Juan again, he drove it. You see, that we had to say something.
So you're still the party of civil liberties?
Definitely. That underpins everything. See, the idea that everybody is equal. See, that just because you're somebody from a marginalized community, you have to shut up and listen to the majority. We disagree with that.
15 years ago, so I mean, I agree with that. I agree with the civil liberties part, the healthcare part. I'm on board. So the question I have for you is, 15 years ago, SDP would be doing demonstrations and so on, right? But you have abandoned that, right?
Yeah, we don't need to.
Why is that?
Because we can go on social media. Sun Juan can put up a TikTok.
So demonstrations was just a means to an end.
It's a means to an end. Because that was the only way you could get, the media,
eyeballs.
the eyeballs, the mainstream media to look at you, the foreign media to come and look at you. We were the first people to put up a political podcast. It got banned. We were the first people to put up a humorous campaign video. It got banned. So we're just trying to think of, even the last election, we tried to get Google ads, and then Google backed off. And the PAP said, we didn't tell them. But you see, this is the genius of the PAP. It's the self-censorship. Google itself decided to self-censor. Come on.
Ultimately, corporations just want
Exactly,
profit.
they want the business.
They just want the business. Okay. So, thank you. And so your healthcare, you think if the philosophy changes, everything else will change from that?
Yeah. And I think this philosophy change is not difficult because we came from that philosophy. See, the PAP in the 1960s was a democratic socialist party, which, had hardcore socialists who were accused of being communists. In the leadership, in the CEC. The CEC was practically split down the middle between the left wing and the centre right. Yeah,
indeed. So I want to pick your brain a little because I think you are, so if you could somehow disentangle yourself from your politician persona, that you're one of the sharpest minds, I think, political minds, but sharpest minds in the country. Honestly, I think you're ministerial level, right? So I want your assessment, and whether you agree with my own analysis, is that I think there are 7 constituencies in play, and you can tell me whether I'm right with these 7, or maybe remove 1 or you add 1. West Coast, East Coast, Marine Parade, Tampines, Punggol, and the 2 SMCs, Bukit Panjang, and of course you're going to say Sembawang JRC is in play as well. Okay, but I think realistically,
it's an uphill battle.
Okay.
I mean, Sembawang, the extent, again, the geographical extent is huge.
It's huge.
Yeah, from one end to the other is really, really
So
far.
do you agree with me, these are the 7 that
I think most people would say these are the 7 which are the most hotly contested.
Would you agree with me, Bukit Panjang and West Coast are the ones that are most in play?
I don't think so.
Why?
No, because, this is the thing about WP, is they are very wary of the media. And this goes all the way back to JBJ days.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. They are so guarded with the...
They are very, very guarded.
With their appearances. Yeah.
That's right. Whereas, I like to talk to you. I'm
waiting for Pritam to come on.
But... So they are very...
Oh, so you think they have a few things up their sleeve?
They have plenty of things up their sleeve. And they have the ground game.
Yeah.
See, they're out there all the time, and they have the town councils. They have the 2 town councils, which the neighbors can look in and see.
Yeah,
things are not falling apart.
Right.
The town councils are running pretty well.
They've done well in Parliament. Yeah. They've done well with the town council, right? So I definitely. What would you do if you were Pritam?
Oh, that's really hard. I'm not Britam. Okay, obviously, yeah.
Such a safe answer.
Yeah, no, but actually, I think.
Is it time for a big move?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, so you would tell him get out of alternate?
I think you should definitely get out of alternate.
Okay, this will be the Straits Times headline tomorrow. All Tambyah urges
Pritam to get out of alternate. Well, I mean, he's not going to listen to me, lah. Why would he? Come on, he's won so many more
elections. I'll go one step further, you know. Yeah. I'll go one step further. I
think Sylvia should also get out.
I think at least two of them. Two of the three.
Yeah.
Pritam, Faisal and Sylvia.
That's right.
I think because Arjun is pretty safe, and these two have earned their
stripes.
Their stripes. Yeah. So over the.
There's a strong rumor Faisal's coming to Tampines.
I've heard that. I didn't want to say it, but I've heard it. You heard it from Professor Tambyah first.
No. I mean, I don't know him at all. I've met him a couple of times. Really nice guy.
Really nice guy.
He did have a medical issue.
Indeed. Yeah. He had
a
heart attack. So I'm so happy to see him up and about.
Which is
one of the most humble, nicest people you'll meet. Excellent guy. So I think if I were Pritam, I'll come to Tampines on nomination day.
I don't know.
That would be a big move, you know, like Punggol or whatever.
Right.
But we agree that the time is right.
I think the time is right, definitely, for them to move out of alternate.
Okay. Yeah. So Prof. Walid Goding ST since yesterday. I don't think they should cover. So SDP and Town Council, I do think that you have addressed that. So let me see if there are other comments. Immigration policy. So you are a leftist leftist party, but how come when it comes to immigration you are more conservative and more on the right?
This is a misunderstanding of our policy, because immigration in Singapore is very different from immigration in a lot of the other countries. Immigration in the other countries, you come in as a refugee, as an asylum seeker. You stay, you prove your commitment, and then you're given a chance. Singapore has not accepted refugees for 50, 60 years. We have not accepted refugees. So it's a totally different ball game. What is happening in Singapore is people are brought in and actually are de facto being exploited.
What do you mean? Oh, you mean the migrant workers?
Yeah, not just the migrant workers, primarily the migrant workers, but even the S-Pass holders. There's so many stories that you hear about S-Pass holders who have to give back a donation to the company, or have to pay $5,000 or a year for uniforms, which is just ridiculous.
Right.
See, and those are things which are very difficult to prove, but in effect, the kind of salary that the S-Pass holders are getting for the hours that they work would not be enough to sustain a Singaporean. But it is enough for them to make a little bit of money and then go home. But during that time, they are essentially being exploited.
Right.
And as a left of centre party, exploitation of any worker is just totally wrong.
Okay, fair enough. So, who stands a better chance of entering Parliament, you or Dr. Chi, just based on your own ground sensing so far?
Yeah, it's really hard to tell. We were he had 45%, I had 45%.
Yeah, very close.
That's statistically
But he's gone already from that constituency, right?
Yeah, but he wasn't there that long before GE 2020.
But he had one by-election.
He had one by-election, but, they just whacked him completely during that by-election. They even had that fake petition, they went out and got Lee Wei Ling to criticize him.
Right.
See, they pulled out every dirty trick in the book.
Right.
And he recovered through that.
Yeah. So, Sembawang West is chosen because you guys have walked the ground.
Sembawang.
Not Dr. Chi, but SDP
has walked the ground.
That's why it was chosen.
Right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So any final words that you want to say?
Well, I think the main thing I want to say is that people should not be afraid. And they need to tell their friends not to be afraid. Because, fear is actually a paralyzing agent. Fear prevents us from doing so many things. We've seen that in academia. People do safe research, because they think I just do some incremental research, I'll get published, I'll be more likely to get my tenure. But in reality, science and the arts do not progress unless somebody does something unusual.
100%.
And so it's the same for Singaporeans. If we continue down this path, we're just going to be another ordinary country. And in fact, we may be even worse than that. We may be one of those countries which used to be great. There are plenty of them in Southeast Asia.
Do you think the the new PAP leaders also operate with fear? So I know you're talking about voters, but do you think they operate with fear of what?
I think
Making
it is
mistakes?
fear
or
of
what?
making mistakes. And this is I think Nyam Tong Dao talked about this.
Yeah.
You know, he said, and this is a direct consequence of the high salaries. Because the perception is that if you make a mistake, you take a risky venture, and then you're out. Then you lose your really comfortable salary, your GCB, and all those things you see are gone. You know?
No, let's not get that. I see, you're trying to goad me into.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if I were to think about it, a
Right.
lot of these ministers, they were earning big bucks before they became ministers. Like Shanmugam was earning far
Yeah,
more.
I mean, Shanmugam was earning a lot. And
Vivian, Ng Eng Hen.
no lah, they were civil servants. Come on.
Vivian was.
Vivian was. Vivian was in he was the CEO of SGH.
Right.
And Ng Eng Hen was in private practice. But
Yeah.
you know the thing about private practice surgeons or surgeons anywhere, you know the peak income for a surgeon is at age 56, 57.
Oh.
After that, your hands start to shake. And people don't go to a surgeon whose hands are shaking. You know, so I mean, I like Eng Hen. I've known him for 30 over years. I knew him from medical school days.
Okay.
He was very inspiring as when I was a medical student, and you know, he's kept me as a advisor to the SAF. Every year we have a dinner
Nice.
and he shakes my hand in public.
Nice.
And comes around and tells me the same stories. but you know, they're the exception. You look at the people who are coming in now.
Right.
These are civil servants.
Okay, I take that point. So I think that argument will apply to former civil servants.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then those like Shanmugam and all the
exactly,
other,
they're
other
the
people.
exception.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So I really enjoyed. You took a picture with, was it Rachel or was it Rachel or?
Where was this? Oh no, Honey So.
Honey, sorry. Yeah, Honey, yeah. So Honey and I enjoyed that.
She took the picture.
Hey, but you look like you were happy to take it.
I mean, she was very nice and friendly, but it was very interesting. We just parked the car, we got down, and then she appeared.
Okay.
And then she said, "Come, let's take a selfie."
Okay.
And so I said, "Okay, sure." And she was very friendly. She said, "Welcome to Woodgrove," and you know that kind of.
Can
thing.
you commit to? So I asked WP yesterday.
Right.
Can you commit to fair elections? So no dirty, no personal attacks. We go after issues. We can be hard. We can debate. We can be strong. We can be aggressive. But no personal politics.
Of course,
no personal
we have never done that. You know, all along. I mean, you know, Sunjan has said this for time and again. You know, they have called him all kinds of names from Lee Kuan Yew's time. See, but he has never stooped to that level. And I think that's the tone he has set. Even during the Bukit Batok by-election 2016, there were a couple of our guys who were making oblique digs, not even direct digs, and he called them out.
I remember that part.
Yeah.
I was disappointed with a few people who were saying, no, he was jobless and whatever.
Yeah.
I really didn't like.
And that's very mild, you know, compared to the things that they have said about him.
Yeah. But I feel like, no, Lee Kuan Yew's one, right? He just calls you like that, right? It's harsh, but it's right in your face. But you do these oblique references. I just feel much more uneasy.
No, that was at a rally, and you know they were just trying to rile up the crowd. Right? So, I mean, not making excuses.
Right. Okay.
But I can totally understand where they were coming
Fair
from.
enough. So, okay, and I think politicians, do you agree with this, right? Politicians have a moral duty to just tone it down, just to set the tone for politics in Singapore and or anywhere, you know, and people will always, their temperatures will always rise, right? You know, there's a Malay saying which I've heard on the streets. I don't know whether it's in the books, but if the teacher is peeing standing up, the student will pee while running. You know what I mean? So if politicians are setting like this, the followers will go even further. Do you agree that politicians have a moral duty not to like abhorrent posts?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's for sure.
Not to be attacking each other in public.
Yeah, I think so. But you know, the sad reality is that time has overtaken this. See, that may have been true about 5 years or 10 years ago, but now with social media, you know, any crazy guy can just inspire a whole bunch of followers.
Right.
And you know,
so you think politicians are no longer thought leaders?
I mean, there is
not as much.
No, I don't think there are as much thought leaders as before. I mean, you've seen this. You know, Joe Rogan, all these crazy guys can command a following that's much bigger than any politician.
Joe Rogan, I mean, he has the largest podcast in the world, right?
It's just
life
totally
is not fair.
insane.
Life is not fair.
Yeah.
Okay, the last time you said that Taman was your favorite PAP politician.
Yeah.
Taman is no longer there. Who is
Yeah.
your favorite PAP
Well,
politician?
I think it would have to be Louis Ng.
You said Louis Ng also
Did
the
I?
last time, yes. Louis is my favorite also. He's appeared twice already.
Right.
Other than Louis, that's a safe one.
No, that's hard. Well, to be honest, I go to a lot of medical conferences, and the last 3 medical conferences I've been to, Janil has been the guest of honor.
Okay.
And
You get along fine with it?
I mean, I get along. I knew his brother very well, and of course, his father, was really one of the great leftist leaders in history, Singapore and Malaysia history. But what I liked, and in fact, I kind of jojoed him about this the last time I met him at a conference, was he started taking this issue of race and religion. I said, did they tell you to stop? And he said, no, nobody tells me anything. But I wasn't convinced. But the fact that he could take it up, he took it on Channel News Asia.
I remember, regardless of race.
Yeah, that was a very good series. I thought it was very frank and it was very open.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I think he's a distant third behind Taman and Louis.
I wanted to be conciliatory and you added distant in there.
No lah. Nothing against him.
Politicians move when the public moves, right?
Right.
So that happened because people were talking about race, right?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Well, actually, I think it's two. The politician who's a pragmatic politician moves when the public moves, but the conviction politician tries to lead the public.
Right.
So this is where, again, Sun John for years and years, he's been talking about human rights, and nobody really cares about it. Singapore ultimately is a corporation. People come here from overseas, and even the academics. They're just so amazed by how much grant money and all that kind of thing counts for everything. It's like a business, and they look at how many startups you can set up,
and they will say they will criticize every country's human rights.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. But do you think Gaza has changed that a bit amongst young people, where suddenly the issues about foreign policy, about human rights?
I think Gaza has changed that among young people, but it's and the response of the older people, trying to crush it, is actually potentially going to make it even worse.
Okay. Yeah. The older people are still
very
social harmony. Social harmony. Let's not rock the boat.
But that's the only way society progresses, is when you have troublemakers, right? Who try and I gave the example of the suffragettes. 100 years ago, these people were considered terrorists for trying to get women the vote.
Yeah. On that inspiring note, let's all aspire to be troublemakers. Well, not all, right? But society needs a few.
It needs a few. It needs a few.
It needs a few. Yeah. Prof. Tambyah, all the best, and I really hope you do well in your constituency.
So do I. Of course.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.